Good evening and welcome to The Report with me, John Rees. On tonight's programme, we'll be looking at the recent raids on suspected terrorists in Europe and a Tory claim that the UK economy has improved. Plus, President Goodluck Jonathan has visited northeast Nigeria, where as many as 2,000 people have recently been killed by Boko Haram. But first, here's the latest about the terror threat in Europe.
Over the last 2 days, Europe has seen 2 crackdowns on what officials have said are terrorist groups. In Belgium yesterday, during an operation that took place in the eastern town of Verviers, police killed 2 men who opened fire on them. Officials there say that the group was about to launch a terrorist attack on a grand scale. A 3rd man was arrested. It is unclear whether there is a connection between this group and the attack that took place in France last week.
During the investigation, we found that this group was about to commit terrorist attacks in Belgium. During the search warrant in Verviers, certain suspects immediately opened fire with automatic weapons at the special forces of the police. They opened fire during several minutes before being neutralized.
The showdown occurred during one out of around a dozen raids that took place against the group. This comes as Belgian prosecutors say that they have detained a man who they suspect supplied weaponry to Amadi Koulibaly, the man who killed 4 people at the Jewish grocery store in Paris last week. In Germany today, early morning raids on 12 properties and a mosque led to the detainment of 2 people who are reported to be linked to Islamic radicals. Officials have said that the raids are not related to the attacks in Paris. According to prosecutors and police, the arrests followed investigations which have been going on for several months into 5 Turkish citizens aged 31 to 44 who are suspected of preparing a serious act of violence against the state in Syria, as well as money laundering. Police said one of the men arrested was the leader of a group who had radicalized members through lessons, while the second man was responsible for the group's finances. Ayman al-Rifai, The Report.
Joining me on Skype to discuss the clampdown on suspected terror activity is Yassine Channouf, a civil rights activist from Movement X. And on the line from Berlin, we have Saboura Naqshband, who's an anti-racist activist. Welcome to the show, both of you. Yassine, you're joining us from Antwerp. What's the political temperature like in the country now?
Yeah, it's a very tough time now for not only the city of Antwerp, for Belgium in general. The latest news is that tomorrow the army will descend on the streets in Antwerp in order to provide security, because the terror threat is very, very high right now. And the freedom of speech now is very limited, because the police has visited several homes of people who have been supportive of the actions in Paris, the terrorist attacks in Paris. So it's a tough time right now.
And are we likely to see some of the increasingly serious clampdowns on free speech that we've just seen in France coming to your country as well?
We have already seen them, because for me, I'm speaking as Movement X. We have contacted the Antwerp police, and we have provided them with hate speech, anti-Islamic hate speech, and we provided them with the question, why didn't they do anything about it? Because as we have seen in the Netherlands, in Sweden, in Paris, there is an increased attack on Muslim targets. Veiled women are harassed on the street. Mosques are being burnt down. But the police is only clamping down on hate speech coming from Muslim and especially Muslim youth. So we think that's not a very consequent approach from the Belgian police and the Antwerp police.
Okay. Saboura, in Germany, is it a similar picture or different? We've seen, after all, Chancellor Merkel attending rallies designed to counter the effect of the Pegida movement. So what's it like there?
I would agree with the activists from Movement X that the situation is very heightened and sort of it's not on the brink of escalation. Of course, from the elite, from the governments, there are soothing words in order to also do politics in a direction that has, I think Merkel is also responsible partly for the build-up of anti-Muslim racism, at least insofar as people in government positions like Yassine have spread anti-Muslim hate speech long before, for the past couple of years and the past decades, even, I would argue. So I think it's a move definitely to say that Islam is part of the society, but I think it's coming a little bit too late. And the civil society resistance is pretty good in some parts of the country, but this is just I always feel that it's on the verge of swinging either this or that way, depending on how we deal with the idea of freedom and the idea of freedom of speech. And I'm very worried at the moment, and the situation is particularly very similar to the one in Belgium that was described.
Mm. And is there any news emerging about whether there actually are links between some of the people that the German police have raided and groups in Syria, or is that just something that's being said but hasn't been really substantiated yet?
Well, I think in general there's a lot of rhetoric that's going on. I'm not saying that there are no links or anything like that, but we hear the words very often. Islamic radicalism, even in the report just now, and it always seems right now, to be honest, myself, I'm very confused. I hear the word terror all the time. I hear the word Islamic radicalism, Islamists, Salafists, etc. So I'm very confused about what are the actual links on the ground, and how are these accusations used for political purposes as well. One of the people working for the Green Party just said that, it's very good that now there's more pressure on these scenes and these attacks, and that we're also responsible for attacks, for preventing attacks that will be happening in foreign countries. But for the people who are hearing this news, this just means that 2 people were arrested, and they were planning some attacks in a foreign country. And I think that there's a lot of not just hypocrisy, but in terms of looking at what foreign policy actually has to do with what's happening on the ground, how criminals are being persecuted, how certain Muslim groups and bodies, I would say, are racialized and profiled. I think it's very blurry for the public to understand what are the links on the ground.
Yassine, I mean, disentangling the fact that there are obviously a minority of people who will undertake terrorist acts, and at the same time a huge majority of Muslims who have nothing to do with that. That's where the debate lies now, isn't it?
Yeah, that's where the debate lies now, and we have to ask ourselves the question: why is there a minority who is willing to commit such horrible acts, not only in Paris or in the streets of London or in Madrid, but most of their acts are committed against fellow Muslims in the Arab or Islamic world. So the question we need to ask ourselves, especially in Belgium, where a disproportional great amount of Muslim youth has been going to Syria, then we are asking ourselves social questions as well, questions about education. Our education system is one of the best of the world, but it is notorious because it reproduces inequality. If you look like an Arab or a Muslim, chances are not so great that you will find employment so easily, or you can find a house you can rent. So there's a discrimination and racism in our society, and if we do not do anything about it, I think we will see more and more young people radicalizing and going to places like Syria and Iraq and returning and committing such horrible acts.
Give us some sort of more detail on that, because we've seen, I think people are more familiar with the picture in France, where there are obviously laws against wearing the burqa, where it's now illegal for Muslims to pray in the street. They will have seen that there's some 60% figure for Muslims in the prison population and so forth, as opposed to being 7% of the population. How do those kind of statistics and those kind of social indicators sit with the situation in your country?
The situation is similar and at the same time not so similar because of the French laïcité, so the strong secular trend in the French policy. In Belgium, it's not as bad as in France, I would say. But for example, one of the most manifest forms of discrimination is against veiled women and veiled girls who want to go to school and who want to wear their veil. It was possible until a few years ago when the education system started changing and started adopting policies against wearing the veil because of some minor incidents. So because of some minor incidents, a great majority is being punished. And yes, because of the undemocratic education system here, a lot of young people from from Arab or Muslim from the Arab Muslim minority commit more criminal acts. But there's also something called ethnic profiling here in Belgium. If you look like me, for example, chances are greater that you will be stopped by police. Our president today, tonight, he was held at gunpoint for 20 minutes by the police in Brussels, simply because he wanted to get out of a car and go to his home. So he was put at gunpoint for 20 minutes under his own home until reinforcements came, and then he was released. So this is just a brief picture of how the situation is right now, and on a daily basis, it seems today.
And that's Abu Jaja that the reports are now circulating about that incident.
Yes, that's the incident I'm referring to.
Yes. Okay. In Germany, Saboura, do you think that the political forces on the left have been playing a role in the movement against Pediga? I mean, it's the Die Linke, for instance, have taken a stand, haven't they?
I think they do, and of course, there are large coalitions to stop Pegida even from marching and to organize in all the major cities to show that there is resistance, there is no acceptance of racism on part of civil society, or at least there is a significant symbolism around that. And of course, the leftist parties have been instrumental in organizing these, and also in organizing a refugee movement that was very large in Berlin in the past 2-3 years. At the same time, of course, they're also losing a lot of votes and a lot of people in the public that are voting increasingly right-wing parties like the Alternative für Deutschland, the AfD, or other smaller right-wing groups which are supporting the big Pegida anti-Muslim movements. And so you've got there are a lot of problems within the political spectrum and within the leftist parties in Germany in particular. Germany, of course, a country that has its own history with anti-Semitism and a certain historical link to racism. The problem is that there is a huge debate around what is the identity of Germans, what does being a white German mean? How does that political responsibility of the history play out? And then you actually see some kind of anti-Muslim movement also, and speech, and certain splinter groups that are growing and growing within the leftist parties emerging, that are also very hard for us to tackle, especially activists of color who are obviously organized within the left. But we're finding it hard for our voices to be heard as well, because there are people who actually do support U.S. policy, imperialism, who are very, very pro-Israel, which is a big point. So there are a lot of tensions that we're dealing with here on all sides of the political spectrum.
Okay, Saboura, Yassine, thanks for joining us, but I'm afraid we'll have to stop the conversation there. But do stay with us for the second part of the show, where we'll be taking a look at the rest of today's top stories, and we'll be also having a look at what you've been saying on Twitter. That's after the break.